We are 22S Radio, the next wave of K-Beach. Broadcasting from Cal State University, Long Beach, this is KKJZ FM HD 3, Long Beach, Los Angeles, and 22westmedia.com. We are 22West Radio, the next wave of K-Beach. A program of associated students at Cal State Long Beach. This is 22West Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first edition of Beyond the Ropes. I'm Rob.
I'm Ethan. We're off to a great start. We're off, I'm repeating lines here. My first time here. Excited to be here. Our new home. And, well, I guess we should reintroduce ourselves to a new audience.
Oh yeah, and for those of you who aren't aware, we're actually, our show is pretty unique in the sense that we incorporate video as well. We will also be having our belts.
What happened?
Did you bring?
Oh, yes.
Yes. So it's a unique, I would say, prop about our show.
If you're watching us, which you may be able to once we get our videos up later this week, we brought our broadcasting tag team title belts that have our names on them, and something to make our show unique and different is we kind of created these back in our old station to really separate ourselves from other radio talk shows. So it's really cool that we get to incorporate it here and bring it over to the 22 Radio.
Yes, and so for those of you who aren't familiar with the concept and everything, but pretty much, we're two individuals who grew up our whole lives watching pro wrestling.
At 5 years old, I went to my very first wrestling event, WWE SmackDown, in the year 2000, and that's probably the earliest memory I have of being a pro wrestling fan. And now, 15, 16 years later, here we are, now hosting a radio show.
Yes, I remember my earliest memories visiting my great-grandma's house, and my uncle would have Raw on. And I remember just watching wrestling, and my uncles would always watch wrestling. And I remember the earliest memory, I think I had like a Hulk Hogan teddy bear. And yeah, I just remember all that. But, I think the one thing that we always hear, from, certain individuals, obviously the people who don't watch it, is there's this, obviously you're not going to get by with somebody ending up saying, oh, it's this fake. But
right.
I think one concept that someone mentioned one time is calling them stuntmen who really know how to act.
Right.
Because they do have to be great on the microphone, but what people may not understand is, it's like choreography and it's entertainment, but these entertainers also do like a lot of things even outside of the ring, and pro wrestling has gone mainstream to like a lot of television and network deals, and so pretty much we'll critique matches. We have a segment where we try to kind of see who's more psychic with the pay-per-view predictions and stuff.
We'll predict pay-per-view events and just kind of decide who we want to win certain events, and we'll do that during major pay-per-views, including one coming up, WrestleMania, which is the biggest pay-per-view of the year for sports entertainment / pro wrestling. And just to distinguish, sports entertainment is essentially pro wrestling, just kind of a more mainstream approach to it. And you mentioned mainstream is, names like The Rock and Hulk Hogan have made pro wrestling mainstream by starring in films and huge blockbuster action movies and such. And so, yeah, we'll be giving our predictions. We'll be talking about mainstream news that's happening in the world of professional wrestling as well.
Yes, and so we do interact with our Periscope viewers as well.
Yeah, what's our Periscope?
I'm just setting it up right now.
Oh, there we go.
It's a pro wrestling radio show.
There we go, pro wrestling radio show. So look us up on Periscope. We are on YouTube, correct?
Yes.
YouTube.com/
So they could look up the blog, robfloresmedia.com.
There you go, the blog is right there. You can also give us a like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/beyondtheropes. we have a few people there that like our page, and we'll usually give our prediction, our written out predictions of pay-per-views and such on there as well, and we'll interact with anyone that wants to chat with us about pro wrestling.
Yeah. So you'll often hear us critique the most recent stuff also that has aired on network television, but we have to remind you that there are multiple companies. So occasionally we might bring in some other companies and talk about like this is so cool, we saw this show on like Netflix, or we saw this show on like whatever.
So the main talking point for us is WWE, obviously the biggest sports entertainment pro wrestling show and company in the world. But there's other promotions such as New Japan Pro Wrestling, which a lot of Americans are really into these days, and it's a very big company. There's Impact Wrestling, there's Lucha Underground, which is Lucha Libre kind of style of wrestling, and there's plenty of others that I'm sure we'll discuss if they're bringing in a lot of news and such.
Yeah, and so, ladies and gentlemen, we have recorded so far 44 episodes. This is the 45th episode, but at a new home. So we can't wait to just get to it. And let's get started. What's been going on since our last show?
Our last show was 10 months ago on a different radio station, but you can watch our old videos and old footage of our previous episodes on our Facebook page, as we mentioned, or on Rob's blog page. But 10 months, a lot has happened in 10 months. A lot for women's wrestlers, a lot women's athletes, which we're going to save for next week, I believe. I think Rob and I agree on that, because there's so much has happened for women athletes. I think one of the biggest was probably Ronda Rousey coming and joining the WWE roster and becoming a WWE superstar.
Yes, and I think that's the huge part about wrestling is now it is being more respected in the fact that it's even covered on like ESPN.
ESPN covered it over the last few years. There was even a segment at one point. I don't know if it's there anymore, but it was covered as along with other sports like football and hockey and everything. So yeah, it's definitely being brought much more to the mainstream thanks to names like Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar, who has been the Universal Champion. The Universal Champion is obviously the big champion in the WWE, and so when you have someone like Brock Lesnar, you're obviously going to get a lot of attention brought to you. So Brock Lesnar, since our last episode, has maintained holding that Universal Championship all through summer and fall of 2017 and into this year as well. And he will be defending that title against one of the biggest names in recent years, Roman Reigns. A very polarizing figure because he does get a lot of mixed reactions. But I think Brock Lesnar has been one of the big names to discuss when you're talking about sports entertainment. You can see us on Periscope now, we're testing.
Literally, we got like 4 cameras going on right now.
We've got Periscope, we've got 2 cameras going on.
You Now.
Oh, we're on You Now, that's what we're at. Awesome. Where can they find us on You Now?
This is the Pro Wrestling Talk Show #.
Perfect. And so, what other big names do we have to discuss?
The Hall of Famers inductions coming up.
Hall of Fame inductions coming up.
Yeah.
One of another polarizing figure, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett left the WWE in 1999 to, at the time, WWE's biggest competitor, WCW, and since then has kind of been on the blacklist. He eventually started a wrestling company called TNA Impact, which he has since left, and he made a lot of WWE's current stars really well known, like names like AJ Styles, who is the current WWE champion, Bobby Roode, and Eric Young is there, and so many other names.
Yeah. And Jeff Jarrett's one of only 2 people I think that are known like big time for the guitar and busting up people's heads.
Absolutely. Honky Tonk Man is another name. Essentially, Jeff Jarrett's character in WWE and kind of WCW as well was coming out and playing guitar and then just smashing it over people's heads. We're seeing that now with the current WWE superstar up-and-comer, Elias, who's also doing quite well. So you see a lot of similarities between past and present, kind of history repeating itself in a way. But yeah, well, I wonder if we'll see any interactions there between Jarrett and Elias maybe at WrestleMania or something. What other names do we have here?
Ivory.
Ivory, women's wrestling. We're going to get into details about women's wrestling next week, but Ivory is a former multi-time women's champion. She was a part of the original series Glow before it was revived on Netflix. So if you watch Glow on Netflix the past year, you might be familiar with how that show works. But Ivory was one of the originators in the 1980s. And so she built herself quite a career in WWE, and now she's back, and she will be inducted into the 2018 Hall of Fame.
Thank you for joining into the stream as I see people calling you hi right now. They're watching Ethan right now.
Hey, how's it going? Are you filming just me?
Yeah, right now. We got plenty of streams, you know.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Who else do we have in the Hall of Fame? We've got Goldberg.
A tag team.
Oh,
Yeah.
the Dudley Boys.
It's about time.
They are 24-time tag team champions. They've won championships everywhere they've been. From, ECW when they started, WCW, WWE, Impact Wrestling, New Japan, you name it. They are the most decorated tag team around. And so they rightfully deserve to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. ECW Originals. ECW, kind of an extreme brand in the 1990s for pro wrestling, known to be extremely violent and at times even careless. So
Oh, yeah, and the cool thing about them is they're one of the few people who, they're still active in the business, but that are teachers as well right now.
yeah, they have the Team 3D Academy in Florida, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, where they train young and up-and-coming talents. So it's all about giving back, and they've done that. I know Devon, one half of the tag team, is still working for WWE backstage.
Oh yeah, he's like a agent now?
As an agent or producer, helping put together matches and such. And Bubba Ray, or Bully Ray as he's known, is in Ring of Honor. Did he retire? I believe he retired recently.
I heard he did a comeback for like a 6-man tag or something like that, I think.
Okay.
And then he teamed, I think, with Tommy. I could be mistaken.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. But yeah, he did retire for a brief second. I don't know if that's a permanent.
I think it was a table spot, something happened.
Right. So there's that tag team there. And who else do we have? We have the headliner, Goldberg.
Oh wow, a man that was known for having a streak for quite some time.
Yeah, he went 170 something, right? 176, I think.
And I like how he's giving props to Asuka.
Yeah, Asuka, who is currently undefeated, is the most successful women's wrestler on the roster right now. And she has surpassed Goldberg's record of 170. She's headed to almost 200, I believe. And so that should be interesting. She has a prominent role at WrestleMania, where she will be defending her streak against the SmackDown Women's Champion. You hear some background noise? We have some guests passing by.
I know we have 4 different camera angles going on at once.
Say hi, guys. And so, yeah, Asuka is without a doubt one of the strongest competitors in WWE today. So be on the lookout. We'll probably discuss more about her next week. So be sure to tune in for that. Who else do we got?
I think it's important also to note that this is the biggest year, I think, also for Japanese performers. I think this year, considering their victories.
Asuka won the inaugural Royal Rumble match. For those that don't know, Royal Rumble is essentially a 30-person battle royal, where the winner will go on to face a champion of their choice in the main event of WrestleMania. Asuka was one of them. She's obviously a Japanese superstar, And Shinsuke Nakamura is another who made his name in New Japan Pro Wrestling, having amazing matches, came to WWE just under 2 years ago, won the NXT Championship, which is kind of WWE's developmental brand. Now it's essentially a third brand. And since then, he's kind of been on a roll, and he won the Royal Rumble match this January, and now he's going to face the phenomenal AJ Styles for the WWE Championship, a dream match that has happened actually in New Japan, but never in America and never to the American audience quite like this before, and not on this grand stage of WrestleMania.
And I think the cool thing about Shinsuke is, especially pro wrestling companies that have televised deals, music is just such a huge thing in professional wrestling. I mean, the individual wrestlers' theme songs, they're just as big of an important factor in the entertainment aspect. And Shinsuke, the reaction people have with his theme song, tell us about it.
Well, it's a violin that pretty much starts off his introduction, and it really gets you pumped. You mentioned the theme songs really play a part of the superstar's characters, and when you talk about characters, Shinsuke is one of the most charismatic individuals, and when he comes out, you really get excited and really get pumped for what's to come, because that music, it starts off with a violin part, and then it really gets into a lot of like the pop kind of EDM almost style of music, and with the strobe lights and everything that happen in his entrance, it's quite enamoring, it's quite impressive, and so it's really worth a check out, a look at if you want to see what it's all about.
Thank you to our audience viewer. Another comment, somebody likes Ethan's beard.
Thank you very much. It's still coming in. Well, that's something about our radio show that has always happened. We always get some interesting comments. In the 45 episodes we're doing, we always have interesting comments, and it keeps us on our toes, definitely. Who else can we talk about? Who's had another impressive year? Braun Strowman.
Oh, yeah.
Braun Strowman, I believe he's 7 foot, correct?
Oh, yeah, he's huge.
He's 6'11", 6'12", maybe, 7 foot.
I think the interesting about him is he's managed to keep his character life separate from his normal life and social media.
Absolutely. So when you see him in a WWE ring or a WWE environment, he is this over-the-top monster. He's a legitimate monster because he's huge, and he's a former strongman competitor. So he's won, I believe, strongman competitions, and so he's a legitimate, beast, to put it lightly. And so when you see him in the WWE ring, he will overpower pretty much everyone and everything. And then when you talk about his personal life, he's very much into he's very humble, very much into hunting and that kind of stuff, and he seems like a very humble individual. And that's the interesting thing about social media these days. You get to see a lot of the personal side on these wrestlers that you didn't get to see 10, 20 years ago. And so Braun Strowman is one of those guys that kind of separates his real life from his work life. So it's quite interesting to see.
Yeah, I think his comment, what is his subhead on Instagram? It's like simple guy doing like stuff with his buddies or something like that, and he's like fishing and stuff like that.
Something like that. I'm gonna look it up actually. That sounds about right. But who else can we discuss while I load this up?
I think it's important to note how huge. Okay, obviously for those that aren't familiar with professional wrestling, there's all this terminology, but there's these things called factions, and it's pretty much groups of wrestlers who they sell a lot of merchandise by going under one name and stuff like that. And wow, the Bullet Club.
All right, so before we get into that, it's his Instagram handle is AdamSure99. It's not Braun Strowman, so that's one thing. And he mentions, I do outdoors redneck stuff with my redneck friends. And so that's definitely an interesting Instagram tagline. But you mentioned Bullet Club, which has originated in New Japan Pro Wrestling in Japan, founded by Finn Balor, who is now in the WWE. His real name was Devitt, Prince Devitt, in New Japan. And he was joined by Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, and where they started one of the most impressive non-WWE factions in professional wrestling history. After he left, AJ Styles took over, and again, we mentioned AJ Styles. He is currently the WWE champion, but he took over as leader of Bullet Club, and once he left to come to WWE, then we see Kenny Omega take over as leader of Bullet Club. And, you know, guys like the Young Bucks, Cody, there's Hangman Page, Marty Scurll, are the guys that are currently there. There's obviously tension if you follow pro wrestling, but...
Oh, yeah. And I think this goes to show that the power of social media. You know, this group is mainly based in, like, another country, and the power, the amount of impact they have on merchandise is really something.
They've become the biggest seller at Hot Topic stores all over the United States, which is interesting because they're not WWE. They're their own brand. They essentially became well known because they post videos of themselves on YouTube. They have their own channel, I believe it's called Being the Elite, which you can find on YouTube. And you can, I mean, you see Bullet Club merch all over the place. The famous Bullet Club shirt, which has like, it kind of has like a face on it, and it has a Bullet Club name all over their merch. And it's really become a successful kind of, they've become a successful group to the point where they don't need to go to WWE to have their names be, you know, talked about in houses. And, you know, you mentioned household names, you think of Hulk Hogan, you think of The Rock and all that. But now, these days, you really talk about Bullet Club. That's how big they are. And that's how big they've gotten over the last few years because of their brand and because of how they conduct themselves as professionals in and outside of the ring.
And you could tell they've totally been on the radar of WWE with the whole Too Sweet incident.
That's right. So a lot of what the Bullet Club does is reminiscent of what WWE and WCW did as the NWO, another major faction, and D-Generation X. And they've kind of taken elements from those factions and really evolved into making it their own by doing a hand gesture known as Too Sweet, where it's kind of like rock and roll. So if you're watching this, this is what it is. If you're to all four of the cameras, kind of like rock and roll, but you put out your fingers, your thumb and your index and your middle finger, and you make that Too Sweet sign. But WWE did not like that, and they got a cease and desist last fall from WWE, telling them to stop essentially using that because, you know, it's kind of taking what WWE essentially originated, which is not necessarily the case, but that's what WWE feels. And so you see the Young Bucks releasing shirts called with the cease and desist and blocking the Too Sweet, which is hilarious because, you know, you mentioned the branding, and they're without a doubt one of the best kind of groups and individuals that bring out the best branding in sports entertainment.
Oh yeah, and it goes to show it's pretty interesting that, you know, for professional wrestling being so huge that you wouldn't imagine that actual, like, physical gesture would be something copyrighted. You would have thought, like, a phrase or, you know, music, that's kind of like copyrighted, but actual physical gesture, it's quite a huge impact.
Absolutely. And we see a lot of that. You know, a lot of individuals like to keep their brand, and they don't like other wrestlers taking their names or taking their moves. And, you know, it goes beyond just hand gestures and catchphrases. It goes to moves like who originated this move and who originated that. A lot of these days you see a lot of the similar move styles and move sets, and so it's really hard to decipher who originated what.
And, you know, there hasn't been that many, like, girls, I think, associated with it, right, yet, but the few that have been, like, they're really big stars. Like Brandy's getting pretty big, and she's, you know, obviously a competitor, and we're right away noticing what Carl Anderson's wife. She's a great performer as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, you mentioned Brandy Rhodes, obviously married to Cody, the son of legendary wrestler, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. She's built quite a reputation as being a member of Bullet Club, and so it's yeah, a lot of women are really getting some recognition this year. Don't want to go into too much detail, but you mentioned Brandy, Candice LeRae, who recently signed with the WWE, was a big name for so long, and when she finally came, it was almost like unbelievable because you thought, well, she built quite a name with, you know, herself and Joey Ryan as kind of an intergender tag team that you never thought you would see her in WWE, and a lot of women are doing that. They're building reputations. Names like Toni Storm come to mind. I believe Piper Niven is in there too. So a lot of different names are up and coming for women's wrestling.
And, you know, speaking of when we're talking about developmental deals, like what WWE originally had, like what OVW, then they went to NXT, right?
It was OVW for several years, and then I think they lost it to, was it Impact? I don't remember if it was, I think it might have been Impact, might have actually gotten the OVW name. Then WWE went to FCW. That was their original brand in Florida, Florida Championship Wrestling, which was essentially when they signed wrestlers, they would go to FCW and kind of learn the WWE style, learn how to be on camera, learn how to cut a promo, and all that. And it was essentially in a small warehouse in Tampa, Florida. No air conditioner, very little lighting, one ring, and they would perform in front of 20 people, like maybe every week or every other week. And so eventually NXT came along and they moved their operation to Orlando, Florida in 2012 or 2013. And so now they have the WWE Performance Center where you have 7 rings in the building. You have an entire promo class. We have no idea where there's a creek. I heard a creek, and we have no idea where that's coming from. That's creepy. But yeah, there's a promo class. There's a promo room where you can see yourself. There's a gym in there so you can work out. And NXT is essentially WWE's developmental brand, but now it's become a third brand because of how popular it has become. It is heavily wrestling based, as opposed to a lot of what you see on Monday Night Raw or SmackDown Live, WWE's main shows, which you see a lot of different, you know, you see wrestling, you see promos, you see a lot of entertainment-based stuff. NXT is more wrestling-based, where you get to see actual performers really tear the house down with very little restriction. And so before they go to the main roster, as it's known as, you know, before they go to Monday Night Raw and SmackDown, you know, they learn their craft in NXT, and you get to see the stars of the future right there, and you can watch it on the WWE Network. But NXT has become a brand of its own, and it's quite an impressive show. So definitely check that out if you can.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back.
Hundreds of college radio stations take to the air. College radio changes the lives of those who are involved with it, and can change those who listen to it too.
College radio means finding yourself. It helped me find what I wanted to do in not only school but in life.
So support college radio by continuing to listen to this station and supporting the students who make it happen. College radio, now, more than ever. A message brought to you by this station and the College Radio Foundation. For more information, please visit collegeradio.org.
Classic Hits at the Beach,
where you can hear a massive selection of the greatest classic hits of all time, spanning the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Hear those songs that you love that are missing on the radio today. Enjoy the best classic hits with the Even Richard Steven every Monday afternoon at 4 o'clock on K-Beach Radio.
Classic hits at the beach.
And we are back on Beyond the Ropes.
That's right, episode 45. I'm Ethan, in case you forgot it.
I'm Rob, and this is the whole what do they call it? Whatever. But the
You lost
social
it.
medias, social medias. Let's see, how do they reach you again?
Oh, our social media. So, we can do the Facebook page for Beyond the Ropes, facebook.com/Beyond the Ropes. You can follow me on Twitter at EthanEnemy95. And where can we find you?
Rob Flores Media.
There we go. So that's where you can find us, chat with us about pro wrestling, about anything you want to discuss. I'm open to conversations. So, in case you didn't know, we like to go all over the place when it comes to pro wrestling talk. But should we get into some recaps?
Oh yeah.
Because what we do is we do a lot of recaps. We do a lot of recaps.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And we do a lot of recaps on what happened this week on pro wrestling. So let's go with, should we start with Monday Night Raw? There was a pay-per-view this weekend, Fastlane, which we can briefly discuss, but Fastlane was the SmackDown Live exclusive pay-per-view, the last exclusive pay-per-view, because they are going to go back to dual pay-per-views, I believe.
And that should be interesting because, for the longest, I always used to look forward to November because then that's the chance of the whole.
Survivor Series
Yeah.
is usually brand versus brand, which features both superstars from Raw and SmackDown. In case you are unaware, Raw and SmackDown are two separate brands under the same company, obviously, and you have certain superstars on each brand. And typically it would be Survivor Series, where it would be brand versus brand. But moving forward, we're following WrestleMania, following April, we're going to see dual brand pay-per-views. I don't think they're going to be facing each other. It's just that they're going to have matches on the same card. So that's going to be that moving forward. But our last pay-per-view that's exclusive to SmackDown is Fastlane. And just some highlights. We got to see a United States Championship match between Randy Orton and Bobby Roode, a really well-worked match. Bobby Roode, the defending champion, lost to Randy Orton, who is now a Grand Slam champion. So for those that don't know, a Grand Slam champion is is someone who has won every major title under the WWE umbrella. So that's the World Championship, so it could be WWE or Universal. Randy has won the WWE 14 times, I believe, or 13. He has won the Intercontinental Championship a couple of times, and he is a multi-time tag team champion with various other superstars. And this past Sunday, he finally won the last title he needed to be considered a Grand Slam champion. He won that United States Championship and by hitting an RKO out of nowhere. So for those that follow social media and like those memes and GIFs of RKO out of nowhere, that's where it comes from. Those have died down over the last several months, but that's where it comes from.
Did you see Miz give him a shout out?
No.
Yeah, he gave him a shout out. Just told him, I forgot how it went, but it's funny because he mentioned something about, oh, like, you're a real champion, like the ones that, like, they're still reminiscing on the 90s, too sweeting each other and stuff.
That's funny. Throwing shade at Miz, Finn and such. Miz is also a Grand Slam champion. He's a multi-time IC US tag team, and he won the WWE Championship.
Oh yeah, and he'll right away mention that he's probably the only one that had like 3 titles at once.
He won the tag team and US champions. Yeah, it was unified tag team, and then yeah, he's won everything under the sun pretty much. But getting back to the pay-per-view, Randy Orton is now Grand Slam champion, and then let's just go straight to the main event. Or we could talk about Charlotte retaining her title. Charlotte, the daughter of legendary wrestler Ric Flair, is the current SmackDown Women's Champion and will be defending that title against Asuka, as we mentioned earlier. Asuka made her first appearance on SmackDown this past week, and she officially challenged. She won the right to challenge Charlotte this past January. So now we're going to be seeing that in what should be a stellar match. Going to the main event, it was a six-pack challenge between AJ Styles, the champion, Baron Corbin, John Cena, who I'm sure many people know, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Dolph Ziggler. And it was a really fast-paced match, really well worked. AJ Styles came out on top and will be facing the challenger, the winner of the 2018 Men's Royal Rumble, Shinsuke Nakamura, in the main event, or what should be the main event in WrestleMania, anyways. And it's a dream match. So that was kind of fascinating in a nutshell. There's a lot of other things that happened, but we'll get into that more when we get into our recaps for Raw and SmackDown. Excuse me. The show opened up for Monday Night Raw with Kurt Angle announcing that Brock Lesnar wasn't going to make it to Raw. So as we know, as we mentioned earlier, Brock Lesnar will be facing Roman Reigns to defend his Universal Championship at WrestleMania. In recent weeks, Brock Lesnar hasn't made an appearance because he is under a part-time schedule, so he only shows up essentially when he is needed. And the storyline, these days is Brock isn't showing up to work. And an interesting storyline to get Roman Reigns over. And for those that don't know, over is someone, means to get someone over with the crowd, to get them to like the current superstar. So, what are your thoughts on the storyline? Because Roman Reigns came out, cut a promo saying he's not surprised Lesnar didn't show up, and then he went to the back, kind of breaking kayfabe in a sense, going through that, kind of breaking through like glass ceiling of going to Vince McMahon, who's backstage in Gorilla, and calling him out, saying, hey, where's Brock, and why am I not aware that...
I think this is just another attempt that Vince is trying badly to try to get the fans to support Roman, but for some reason the fans haven't been able to get behind him.
I saw the Twitter reaction was very well, a lot of people did like it. However, when it was announced that Vince suspended Roman after he approached him, then a lot of people went back and, kind of said, well, that was a mistake because now people would like not seeing Roman. And so, I don't know, it's a definite mixed reaction on how people are taking the storyline. I enjoy it because we're seeing a little bit of a different side from Roman. He's cutting his best promos that he's ever cut. So there's that at least. But I don't know if it's going to be enough to get him over by WrestleMania.
I think the thing about Roman is obviously, The Rock comes from a very famous family, but it's hard to imagine someone who can be bigger than The Rock. And,
Right.
wow.
Because I don't think they're actual cousins, but they're part of the same dynasty, in a sense. And so, yeah, when you compare The Rock to a lot of the Samoan wrestlers, a lot of the Samoan wrestlers aren't going to live up to what The Rock did in, the Attitude Era of the late 90s, early 2000s. So, but moving on to some women's action, Sasha Banks and Bayley are going through more struggles. Sasha Banks and Bayley had stellar matches in NXT for the Women's Championship a few years ago. They're two of the probably best women's wrestlers right now in WWE. And they've been known to be best friends, but there's tension between them of, trust. Can they really trust each other? So they're sparking a little bit of tension between them. Perhaps a match at WrestleMania is to come. Moving on, we got to see Miz TV. We mentioned The Miz earlier, with special guest Seth Rollins, who is one of the main players of WWE of the last 3 or 4 years. But Finn Balor, we also mentioned, is the first ever Universal Champion. He defeated Seth Rollins actually 2 years ago to become the first ever Universal Champion. And so Finn Balor and Seth Rollins eventually got into a little scuffle and had a match Really fun match. Finn Balor ended up picking up the victory. I like this because at WrestleMania we're going to see a triple threat between these three guys for the Intercontinental Championship, one of the most prestigious championships in professional wrestling history. So it should be a good match.
I know, and I heard that at first there was talk that they were going to try to put in way more people in that match.
Yeah, I mean, it could always change, but I think this is how it's going to be. It could be the United States Championship match that they could add more guys, but we'll see. There was more women's action, some tension between more best friends, Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss. What are your thoughts on this? Because we find out that Alexa Bliss has been using Nia Jax. Nia Jax obviously she's about 6 feet, and she's significantly bigger than a lot of the women's athletes, and so.
I think they were taking a while to decide who Asuka was going to face.
Yeah, because they were under the impression that Asuka was going to be facing Alexa Bliss for the Raw Women's Champion. Alexa Bliss is the current Raw Women's Champion. Charlotte is the SmackDown Women's Champion. There are 2 titles for each brand. But it was supposed to be, or rumored to be, Alexa versus Asuka because Asuka is part of the Monday Night Raw brand. However, when we found out that Asuka was going to challenge Charlotte, things changed, and it looks like we'll be getting Nia Jax versus Alexa Bliss. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but that looks to be the case heading into WrestleMania.
Talk about size difference. I think it's going to be a very interesting match.
Alexa is 5 foot tall. Nia is 6 foot tall, and is probably twice Alexa's size. And so it should be very interesting to see how they work with each other. We've seen them in matches before. I don't recall if it has been all that great, but I'm sure they'll put together something really cool.
I know the fans have always been wondering, like, when will Tamina and Nia ever cross paths?
They did for a brief moment at Survivor Series. They actually, when they were having, so Tamina is, she's on SmackDown. She's currently injured, but Tamina is also another Samoan Dynasty member as well as Nia Jax. And so, yeah, a lot of people kind of wondering when is that kind of dream scenario happening? Well, it happened for a brief moment at Survivor Series when they face off against each other, but it wasn't an actual match between them one-on-one. So, well, I guess we'll have to keep on waiting and seeing what happens next.
Time goes by so fast. We got like 4 minutes.
All right, so let's just finish the Raw recap. SmackDown, not a whole lot happened anyways, but we could get into it next week. Usually we'll spend a lot of our time recapping the shows, so we'll get into that next week when we talk about the women's division and the women's evolution. But finishing up on Raw, we mentioned Braun Strowman earlier. He's had quite a year. He entered a tag team battle royal by himself and won. So now he is a number 1 contender for the Raw tag team titles. However, he has no partner, so it'll be interesting to see where we go from here. You know, is he going to find a partner? Is he going to go it alone? We'll see. We'll have to wait and see.
That'd be funny if he had both of them.
Yeah, he said he wants both titles for each shoulder on Twitter, so be on the lookout for that. Something to look for next week. We get to see the ultimate deletion of between Bray Wyatt and Woken Matt Hardy. For those that don't know, Woken Matt Hardy is a multi-time tag team champion in the WWE and Impact Wrestling, where he's been and everywhere he's been. And he's built quite a reputation for himself the last 2 years, playing this kind of it was originally broken Matt Hardy character, and he brought it over to WWE as Woken, and it's an eccentric version of Matt Hardy, and it has won wrestling fans all over the world over, and we'll be seeing an interesting match between him and Bray Wyatt, another interesting character, this Monday, the Ultimate Deletion, and it should be fun. Just look up Broken Matt Hardy, Woken Matt Hardy on YouTube, find video clips. You're gonna be enamored by this performance and by what goes on. So that's something to look forward to this next Monday on Raw. SmackDown was an interesting show. We started building up for WrestleMania, but we'll get into that more next week. Is there anything else we want to get out before we head out?
Do you know anything that's advertised already for next week?
Besides the Ultimate Deletion, not sure. Oh, there will be Asuka versus Alexa Bliss. Non-title match, of course. But that should be a good match. They had a good match at the beginning of the year, where Asuka obviously won. She is undefeated. So that is happening. We have more WrestleMania build-up. I believe Ronda Rousey's scheduled to return this next week. She'll be in a major match, teaming with Kurt Angle, Olympic gold medalist, taking on Stephanie McMahon and Triple H, obviously. Major players in the WWE, so that's happening. So we just have more story building and more building up for WrestleMania moving forward, and we have arrived at a really fun time in pro wrestling. With WrestleMania just over 4 weeks away, or 3 weeks away, excuse me, we are going to be jam-packed busy, and it should be quite exciting.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have run out of time.
Wow, our first show in the books here at
Yes.
22 West Radio.
It's great to be back on air at a radio station to do this show because we're a kid at heart and we love to go ahead and talk pro wrestling with you guys, and we can't wait for another edition next week.
Absolutely. Thursdays at 10 a.m. Make sure to give us a like on Facebook, facebook.com/beyondtheropes. And you can follow us on our social medias as we mentioned earlier. But until then, I guess we'll see them next time, or you'll hear us next time, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right.